All right, real quick tool tour right here. This is the most used tool in the shop without a doubt. And if it goes down, I've got a backup still new in the box in the trailer. This is my favorite. I've used several brands. Obviously, it's a carbide tooth. This machine has literally tens of thousands of cuts on it. Tens of thousands of cuts, and it still cuts just as precisely as it did. I think it's 5 or 6 years old now, so but I have its backup in a storage building for when it ultimately dies, because literally if this thing goes, the shop is down until I get another. It just gets used that much during the day. It comes with a dust chute or chip chute or whatever you want to call it. I cut that off because it fills up quickly and then throws trash back up in your face. It's not an integral part or structural part of the tool there, so I just take that off. And my little table has a dust chute on the back, and you can see how much it gets used. So it's bolted to the table, a nice comfortable height there, so that it can get used, and of course, just make a stop for it. This is the Evolution S380 CPS, and they make 3 or 4 versions of this saw, and this is the one to have. It's almost $500, just a little between $450 and $500, and it is the heavier base. It's just a heavier saw. It's actually a 15-inch saw, but I run 14-inch blades on it, and I have found that the Evolution blade works very, very well. That's my favorite. The Diablo blade will work as well. I've tried every other kind of blade out there, and those two are the best, the Evolution being the best, and Diablo will work okay. But I just spend the extra money and get the Evolution because it lasts that much longer. So the next tool that gets used the most is the grinders. This is my favorite style of grinder. Not that I'm a DeWalt fan, because I really don't care what I use as long as it works well. This is model, what is that? DWE 43116, and you could get away with just having 2 of these. I did for many, many years, so that you're not having to swap back and forth between the sander and the cutter all the time. That gets aggravating as heck. I use 4 so that I've got something to Scotch-Brite polish with if I need to, and then remove paint and rust is what that does. But you don't need 4 of them. Of course, I build parts, so I have to polish some stuff and all of that business. But I would recommend 2 of them. I like this style. DeWalt even makes a shorter one, which I do not like. I like having the extra leverage. You have one hand here and one hand there. You have more control. I had their shorter version and hated it. Thought that it was going to be nice and compact and all that, and I absolutely hated it because it was harder for me to handle than the longer one. This fit me, and it works well for me. So tools that get used the most, that one right there, obviously these right here. This is the cutting disc. It's the 1.2 millimeter. That's the style that I have settled on, and I have tried everything. I buy these like 1,000 at a time, and they're 1.2 millimeter thick, super, super thin. I don't use a grinding wheel, a grinding stone wheel. I use sanding disc. This is a 36 grit sanding disc, and it goes obviously on the little DeWalt there. You have to get this little backup plastic backing, whatever that's called, adapter, and that just goes on like that. You can see that. These last longer, do better, perform better, and you just do a whole lot better job than with a stone wheel. You'll make a cooker look like crap using a stone wheel, where these you can finesse it and do very, very well, and take a lot of material off very, very quick. You'll be surprised how quickly that happens. Obviously a welder. My welder is the 255, the Miller-Matic 255. For many years I used a little Miller 185, which is a good welder. The Miller 211 right now is a very, very respectable welder. My next door neighbor's got one of those, and I have borrowed it on occasion when I needed to do something remote, running it on a generator out in the field, and it does well. So If you can afford it, get a bigger welder. I would shy away from the this is a Miller-Matic. They have a multi-matic, which does TIG and stick and all of that. I don't get into all of those combinations. You know, if I need to TIG something, I'll use my dedicated TIG machine. You know, that's just something else to break. So I would get just a straight welder. There are two kinds of welders. There are the inverter welders, which this is an inverter welder, which means it's lighter and all of that business, but it works off capacitors. The heavier version is the transformer style, and that's just a matter of preference. This one just happens to be an inverter style. I'm not a big inverter fan, but that's the way things are going now. The inverter ones won't last as long as the transformer ones. You're going to get probably 8 to 10 years out of one of these. But you know, I'm 60 years old. I don't see me doing this in 10 years. So I figured that was probably going to be all right. This one runs, of course it'll run, you've got to have the gas, and this one is running 9010, or should be. Yeah, running 9010 gas, because I use pulse MIG, like I said, about half the time. So for pulse you have to have 9010, and for straight MIG, 9010 works just as well. So I would recommend starting off, if you get a machine that will handle pulse, you know, then go ahead and start using 9010 gas, and you could just use that for pulse and for straight MIG. The next most important, or maybe even the most important piece of equipment in here, is some way to lift heavy objects. I prefer a Jib Crane, and mine just has a 4,000 pound winch on it, and you know, it will swing from it's 13 feet long, so from that corner all the way over to that corner I can pick things up. So in other words, I could pick that wood stove up and move it and set it over in that corner if I wanted to, or pick that table up and move it wherever I wanted to within this 13-foot arc. So but you know, when you're building a shop, those are things to consider. Are you going to use a Jib Crane, which this one is a Jib? See, there's no end on it, and it will swing, and I can put heavy things anywhere I want, as opposed to a gantry crane, which has got two legs on, you know, a leg on either end, and even though they go back and forth, you're limited in where you can move something. If I need to lift something super heavy, I have a dead leg right there that, you know, it's just it bolts on at the top there, bolts to the top of that right there. Basically it's a leg that just comes straight down. So anywhere in the shop I want to put that leg, I can swing it, and then once it gets a little weight on it, it pushes it down to the floor. It hovers about a 1/4 inch off the floor. Once it gets a little weight on it, it you know, transfers that weight to the floor. So I can pick up probably 600 or 700 pounds easy way out here with without the leg, with confidence. If I'm going to pick up you know, 800 to, you know, 2,000 or 3,000 pounds, I just put the dead leg on it, and you know, then it's transferring all that weight to the floor. But you have to have some way to pick that up. I built this. There's really not a lot to it. You can see how the hinge works there. Cutting, I prefer, I always have to have a torch. You know, that's pretty straightforward. You can do anything that you can do with a plasma cutter with a torch, and probably better, but I do have a plasma cutter. I have the Miller's Spectrum 625. It's a nice plasma cutter. It does well. If you're going to get a plasma cutter, make sure you get either the 40 or 45 amp versions. I would recommend 45 amp, just so that you can handle the higher capacity. Welding helmet, I use the right now I've got the Lincoln Viking 3350, the 4C 3350, which is a damn good helmet. I may try the ESOB helmet in a few weeks, just to see how that's going, but that's a very respectable helmet. For welding inside tanks, I use the Miller Papper T94R, which is, you know, the filtered air. It's a damn nice helmet, but it's expensive. You don't need one of those to start with. And for grinding with, there's a lot of dust, or if I'm going to be cutting, you know, with the big gas saw, I use the grinding version. Still uses the filter that goes around your waist. I can show you that right quick. That is the filter that will go with both of those helmets. So if you're welding inside, whenever I'm welding inside the tank, you know, got my head hung in there and all of that business, I wear that so that I'm not, you know, in that confined area breathing in all that smoke. So let's see, those are the must-have tools. Well, obviously not the papper. You could go a long way without that. But I think all of those things will get you started. Oh, as far as cutting sheet metal and stuff, this is my favorite. I've had several saws. I had the Milwaukee metal cutting saw before this. For metal cutting, I like Evolution. They seem to hold up. And this is what is this one? It's the Evo Saw 230, I know, but I thought it had a number on it right there. I don't see, but it's the Evo Saw 230. I don't know if it's still in production. It may be. It is a beast. It is, God almighty, it's heavy. They make 2 lighter versions. I have not tried those. I may in the future, but this thing is a beast, and it has cut a ton of flat sheet metal for me. I used to cut my doors, cooker doors with it, but the metal blades have just gotten so expensive now that it's not really economical to do that. But I use this all the time cutting sheet metal. I just clamp it at the table and run right through it. Obviously, you're going to need a good vise. I would say 6-inch. I also have an 8-inch, but I don't use it that much. The 6 is just a lot more handy. And that about wraps that up. For cutting pipe and stuff like that, I just use my saw, my small saw, but you can cut with an angle grinder for, you know, a long time. You can get several years before you need to get a big bandsaw. And that's not a big one, that's a tiny one. I've got a big one in the other shop. So I hope that helps.